People like you are the worst. You don't deserve the taxes we pay to keep you around. I've always thought you should just disappear. I regretted bringing Emily to this restaurant today, thinking it would be a nice treat. My mom's face looked blank, her eyes distant, as if she wasn't really here with us. I started to think maybe her heart wasn't here either. It got scarier when my sight began to fade and everything turned dark, and I couldn't see anything anymore, Emily said. When she lost her sight completely, she felt relieved. It was strange, she had nightmares about going blind, waking up thinking it was just a bad dream, only to realize it was true when she opened her eyes. Her vision kept getting worse. Those days were so hard to hear about. My mom had always wanted to be a professional painter. She was going to art school and worked with paint every day. The day she passed her university exams, she went out to celebrate with friends. On her way home, a car ran a red light and hit her. She was rushed to the hospital but was lucky, no serious injuries, just some cuts and bruises. I'm lucky to be alive, she thought. But a month later, things changed. She started noticing dark spots in her vision, and everything was blurry. At first, she thought it was just from being tired, but it kept getting worse. She went to a small hospital, and they referred her to a bigger one. The doctor said, traumatic cataract. She wondered, why me? Why my eyes? She kept painting as much as she could, but she didn't feel satisfied. 3 months later, she lost her sight completely and was thrown into a world of darkness. She was devastated, which seemed hard to believe now because she's so positive. She even joked about trying to end her life during those hard times. She met my dad, they got married, and then I was born. I became strong because of your father, Jack and Daisy, she would say. Even though she was blind, she promised herself she wouldn't let anyone look down on her, not even her family. As a wife, she took care of my dad, made lunch for us, and tried her best in everything. She didn't do everything on her own, though. She asked for help when needed and figured out how to manage. When she found out my sister Daisy was being bullied at school, she went to the school by herself. Even though people sometimes treated her badly because of her blindness, she worked hard to fit in, and soon, everyone in the neighborhood loved her. After Daisy and I grew up, I felt embarrassed to thank her in person. During my teenage years, I complained about her cooking and even told her not to come to school events. But deep down, I always admired my mom for how hard she worked for us. She had a tough past, but she was always strong and happy. I had a pretty normal and healthy childhood, but whenever I think I've inherited my mom's strength, I feel like I can do anything. In high school, Ben from the baseball team had a crush on Emily. Everyone was excited about who liked who, but I was too busy with work and studies to care. I remember hearing about Ben's unrequited love for Emily, but I never thought it would affect me. To help my sister Mia fulfill her dream of becoming a news anchor, our family sent her to a prestigious private school for girls. It was tough for us financially, as my dad worked as an office worker, and we had to save every penny for Mia's tuition. Since I wasn't interested in private schools and was a good student, I went to a public high school instead. Knowing our family's situation, I worked a part-time job at a diner to save money for college and personal expenses. After a few months of working there, Ben started coming to the diner, hanging around and paying attention to me. That's Ben, the one with the crush on Emily, I heard people say. He began coming in often, spending hours with his friends. He was loud and disruptive, bothering other customers. Despite our manager's warnings, Ben wouldn't quiet down and kept smirking at me. I didn't understand why, until Emily approached me one day. You're always studying in the library when you're not working, right? I've noticed. I like you, she said, handing me a letter with a heart on it. Ben's actions made sense now, but I didn't feel the same way about Emily. I'm sorry, but I appreciate your feelings, I said as gently as I could, but she started crying and ran away. From then on, the harassment got worse. It started at the diner but soon spread to school, where someone tampered with my textbooks. I felt completely helpless. Ben's family was rich, with both parents holding important jobs in big companies. He had a private tutor to help him with his studies. I didn't want to give in to the bullying or report it, so I focused on my studies. I thought if I could do better academically, maybe Ben would stop bothering me. Looking back, it wasn't easy, but I managed to outshine Ben in school, and by the time I graduated, I could choose any university I wanted. I went to a local state university. By then, Ben's behavior had calmed down, and rumors were that Emily had found a new interest. I was finally at peace and loved learning at university. After using my high school savings for grad school, I got a job at a research institution. It was a bit later than most of my peers, but I was excited to start working. I wanted to take my parents out to dinner with my first paycheck to ease their worries. Mia had recently become a local TV announcer and treated our parents, so I felt I should do the same. The restaurant where we went was special because it's where my dad first met my mom. My mom often joked, "When I'm wealthy, I'll take you to that restaurant." I was thrilled that I could finally take her there. One day, when Dad had to leave for a business trip, it was just my mom and me. As we walked arm in arm, she joked, "Next time, I'll say I want to go to the Caribbean Sea." I laughed, and she asked me, "What's this place like?" Once seated, I described the restaurant, the ambience, the staff's outfits, the decor, and the chandelier color. I wasn't sure if it brought back memories for my mom, but I wanted to make it special. Then, a familiar voice said, "Jack, long time no see." It was Ben, dressed in an expensive suit. He sat at my dad's seat, boasting about his life and inviting me to join him. He had attended a top university and got a job at a big company, thanks to his parents' influence. I started thinking about how much elite education costs. Being part of the wealthy class means barely working while living off large paychecks. "So, what about you, Jack? Still working part-time at the diner?" he asked, trying to bring back the old hierarchy between us. I didn't want to feel inferior, so I calmly talked about my academic journey, my research job, and how I was taking my mom to the restaurant with my first paycheck. "This place must have been a stretch for your first paycheck, huh?" he taunted, trying to provoke me. I tried to stay calm, but I was getting frustrated. I just wanted Ben to leave, especially with my mother there. "Since it was a special day for us, I'd appreciate it if you left. Our meal is about to arrive," I said bluntly. Ben seemed bored by my directness and turned to look at my mother. It seemed like he realized she couldn't see him. "Sorry for interrupting your family time," he said, waving his hand in front of my mother's eyes. When she didn't react, a smirk appeared on his face. "So, you're the child of a disabled person?" His words hit me like a punch, and my anger flared up. I was about to yell at him, but then my mother said softly, "Jack." Ben then pulled a business card from his pocket. "I'm Ben, Jack's high school classmate. If you have a disability, our company can offer some support," he said, handing the card to my mother. "Oh, you can see? Sorry about that," he added insincerely, but my mom just stayed silent. It seemed like Ben was trying to use his company's support for people with disabilities as an excuse. Then, he said, "People like you are a drain on society, living off our taxes. Ever thought it might be better if you just disappeared?" He said this with a big smile, and I was about to tell my mom, "This guy is ruining the whole celebration," but then my mom spoke up. She said calmly, "Handing out your company's card? You're representing them. Should I take what you just said as your true feelings?" She looked at him with her sightless eyes, but her tone was strong, mocking him. Ben responded with, "Wouldn't the world be better off if all disabled people just disappeared? There are plenty of them at my company, and it's disgusting. Is this some charity work or what?" I expected my mom to argue back, but instead, she said, "It's a pity to see a young person with so much potential have such thoughts," and then went quiet. Ben laughed, thinking my mom couldn't argue because her words hit too close to home. He stood up and said, "Since it's a special occasion, let me give you some advice." My mom then said, "Tomorrow, you'll be called to the executive's office and lose your job. I may be blind, but I can see your future. I just had to tell you." Ben laughed off her words, brushing them off as crazy, and left, satisfied with ruining the mood. "Sorry for ruining our dinner," my mom said. "It wasn't your fault. Ben was an acquaintance. I should have ignored him from the start," I replied. "What was that prediction about?" I asked her. I'd never heard her speak like that before, but she wasn't someone who would lie about something like that. She definitely had something up her sleeve. "You'll understand by tomorrow," she said, her voice firm, not wanting to discuss it further. As the dishes arrived, I described them to my mom, and she was amazed at how delicious everything was. I tried not to think about Ben anymore. On the way home, though, I couldn't stop thinking about my mom's distant expression. Despite her blindness, the next day, while on break at work, I saw several missed calls from an unknown number. "Is that you, Jack? Please hear me out," the voice said when I called back. It was Ben, but his voice was filled with desperation, almost like he was about to cry. It sounded like he had gone to great lengths to get my contact info since we hadn't exchanged numbers before. "Please, I'm really sorry for everything. Tell your mom I was wrong about yesterday," he pleaded. I was confused, but then it clicked, just as my mom had predicted. Ben had been called to the executive's office that morning and had been fired. "I didn't know your mom had such power. This is really bad for me," he said, panicking. I calmed him down and promised I'd check with my mom, then ended the call. When I called her, she picked up after one ring, almost as if she knew the call was coming. When I told her about Ben's call, she simply said, "I told you so, didn't I?" I asked her what she had done. "I know Tom Bryan, the president of that company. I just reported that views on people with disabilities aren't good for the future of the company," she explained. That was quite a revelation. I was stunned to learn that my mother was actually a shareholder in Ben's company, Bryan, a company she had never mentioned in our home. She explained that Tom, the president of the company, had helped her when she was struggling with going blind and even contemplating ending her life. Tom also played a key role in bringing her together with my father. I had never known any of this, and it was hard to believe, given how frugal our household had always been. When Tom was starting his company, there was some trouble. He asked my father to invest as a way of thanking him for saving me, she explained. The shares were inherited from my grandfather after his passing, and my mother had never sold them. She made it clear they weren't an asset she could sell, but they still held some weight in her relationship with the company. Then, she added, "I'll get in touch so you and Ben come to the same restaurant as yesterday." Her tone was so commanding, it was like I was speaking to someone else entirely. After work, I met Ben and we headed back to the restaurant. Ben was unrecognizable from the confident guy I had seen yesterday. His suit was wrinkled, and he looked exhausted, completely drained of energy. We sat down, and I saw my mother talking to a man at the table. It was clear from how Ben addressed him that this man was Tom Bryan. "Ben, right? I've heard everything. I've done some research on your behavior in the company," Tom said, his voice firm. "I've concluded that someone like you is a risk to the growth of our company. As declared today, you will have to leave." Ben's face drained of color. He collapsed to the ground, realizing there was no way out. Tom's company had recently launched a project focused on supporting people with disabilities, creating job opportunities for them. They wanted employees who could maintain an unbiased, neutral stance toward those with disabilities. If someone harbored biases, it would be detrimental to the company's efforts to build an inclusive, supportive environment. Any actions that undermine the company's values could potentially harm its reputation and corporate integrity. It came to light through an internal investigation that Ben had been harassing employees with disabilities, deaf employees, those with mobility issues, and others. He had been exploiting their fears of job insecurity, using his position to continue his verbal abuse. Hearing his comment, "They are disabled, a burden on society," my venting a bit should be seen as contributing. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. I could see now that if Ben was capable of saying such things to my mother, he had been doing the same inside the company. My mother realized that Ben's actions went against the very essence of Tom's efforts to create a more inclusive society. That's why she reported him. She knew he was a risk to the company's future growth. Despite Ben's regrets, it was too late. The damage had been done. Sooner or later, someone inside the company, or elsewhere, would have raised their voice about his behavior. It was unsettling, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. My mother's actions had ensured that Ben couldn't hurt anyone else in the future.